very concerned about where we're at in terms of munitions, in terms of what's available, what you need, what we would have if, God forbid, we were in a short-term conflict. It would be short-term because we don't have enough munitions to sustain a long-term fight. So where are we at in procurement and stockpiling of the munitions, particularly precision strike types of munitions that you think you would need in a conflict with a near-peer power?
Sure, I'll take that one. Just for the Navy, we are investing in the munitions we need, particularly to be ready to, if we need to go to war with China. Those are precision-guided, long-range munitions like Tomahawk, Maritime Strike Tomahawk, LRASM, SM-6, SM-2, ARGM, AIM-9X, AIM-120, and the heavyweight torpedo. So all those munitions we need to increase production on. I'm also of the mind that we need to look at other vendors, and they may not be able to produce the same exact specification, but they might be able to produce a missile that's effective, which is more effective than no missile. So I think we've got to open our aperture a little bit, but those munitions that I listed, we need to increase production. And we've done so with things like the SM-6, which used to have 125 rounds a year. We're ramping up to 300 rounds a year. We've restarted our Mark 48 line. That's our premier torpedo. We stopped doing torpedoes in 1996 and now have just reconstituted that line and are going to deliver 10 a month. So that's 120 a year. That's a step in the right direction. But we need to stop looking, like I have, at the minimum sustaining rate and look at what we need for protraction. I think it's foolish to think that we're going to be in a short, sharp war. If we go to war with China, this is going to be a big deal, and it's going to be bloody, and there's going to be casualties, and it's going to take time and munitions. So our stocks need to be full. The 6th Gen fighter has some capabilities that we need to counter the PRC. Those are signatures, those are range, those are different engines, those are all the things that will make it survivable. The Air Force and Navy have different missions, but we're going against the same threat. So if that threat dictates a pivot to that 6th Gen fighter, then the Navy and the Air Force and the Marine Corps and the Army and the Space Force need to bring all that to bear as a joint force to be capable. So I mentioned the air wing of the future. This is kind of the lead sled dog with MQ-25 to shape that out and understand what that looks like. Not only does the 6th Gen fighter replace a 5th Gen fighter, but it also replaces the Growler. So that's a electronic attack aircraft capability that's important in this fight because of the electronic warfare capability it brings.
Absolutely, and I'd like to point out that the Chinese are showing us what they've got, and it's 2 Gen 6 fighters, and they're building more aircraft carriers. So aircraft carriers are absolutely viable.
The USS Truman has faced several incidents in the Red Sea. In December, an F-18 from the USS Truman, as you well know, was mistakenly shot down by the USS Gettysburg. And within the last 30 days, the same carrier lost 2 F-18s to the ocean within a week of each other during operations against the Houthis. What might be done to prevent further such losses and ensure the safety of our service members in that region?
Ma'am, I'll take this and yield to the Secretary. There are 4 incidents. There's one other incident. There was a collision. All those incidents on Truman are under investigation right now. Accountability actions are being taken or will be taken. And when those are complete, I will come brief you. I commit to you to come brief you on those specific incidents. We are committed to learning what happened and preventing it from happening again. And so until those come out, I can't give you specifics, but I can tell you we're going to build those types of scenarios that those ships and aircraft were in and train to it when we do our composite unit training exercise, which certifies a strike group to deploy.
When sources talk about how we may be looking at, having some pretty serious, 3-year delays on fielding what we may need to be fielding for aircraft carriers.
Look, I think, as I said earlier, we're still trying to sort through the appropriate force posture and the appropriate balance between manned and unmanned and what that should look like. I don't think we can ignore swarm drone technology and where it's going to go and how fast it's going to develop and what that means and what the implications are for the force and 6th Gen and fighters. Currently, our carrier is, I think, very, very good. It's a mobile platform. It works very, very well. We will continue to develop that posture and that idea and be able to pivot hopefully as quick as possible. So I think we are still analyzing and looking at it, but I do not believe we're going to do anything that would jeopardize the vulnerability of a carrier.
Right. I mean, again, you all feel confident about that we're not going to, in 2 or 3 years down the road, oops, we don't have the capability, we don't have the platforms, whatever that mix may be, on our carriers that we need.
Well, I guess in a reality situation, to be clear, the 6th gen fighter isn't going to come by January 1st, 2027. It's going to take time to develop that and build it into the future. So the 3-year part is a delay if we started the program late, but it would deliver far into the future. But we've got to commit to that because we're going to have aircraft carriers that are going to live in this contested environment, and that's my operational assessment, that we need an air wing of the future that does everything the Secretary just described for the reasons he described it, to pace the threat. So in 3 years, we're going to deliver the fleet we have to be as capable as it can be to counter the PRC. And then we need to build that future fleet moving forward. Your Navy provides the nation with sea power and sea control, needed to preserve our way of life and ensure our security and prosperity. Your oversight and funding ensure we are ready when the nation calls. I'm pleased to testify alongside Secretary Phelan, who brings the needed and unique skill set and experience to help us accelerate the work of our Navy, and alongside my partner, General Smith, the Commandant of the Marine Corps. In the past year, our sailors have defeated hundreds of drones and missiles and executed dozens of offensive strikes in the Red Sea and the Eastern Mediterranean. They have strengthened alliances and deterred Chinese aggression in the Western Pacific. They have supported operations on the southern border, and they have maintained an unbroken strategic deterrent with our ballistic missile defense submarines. In short, our Navy, integrated with the Joint Force, remains postured to ready to fight and win. We remain committed to a strong global Navy, one that is prepared to defend our homeland, deter our adversaries, and prevail in war. We are laser focused on China as our most consequential opponent while strengthening defense of the homeland. We prioritize operations, training, and readiness accounts to ensure our naval forces remain ready, resilient, and agile to execute national tasking. The Navy and Marine Corps preserves peace through strength, through investments in our strategic deterrence, our defense industrial base, and our installations, via initiatives like the Shipyard Infrastructure Optimization Program. Most importantly, we are continuing to have a strong commitment to our people, our sailors, our Navy families, and our civilians through pay raises, investments in quality of service initiatives, and unaccompanied housing and child care. But we are facing some challenges. First, the Navy has 23,200 gaps at sea. Thanks to process improvements and targeted investments, we are on plan to reduce that number significantly by the close of FY26. We are committed to attracting and developing Americans who can innovate, solve hard problems, and dominate in combat. The Navy contracted over 40,000 sailors last year, the most since 2003, and we are currently on pace to exceed our recruiting goal for FY25. Second, our ordnance expenditures in the Red Sea have highlighted the strain on our munitions industrial base. The Navy is working with both our traditional primes and new entrants to close this gap, developing kinetic and non-kinetic weapons at speed and at scale. And third, our platforms are not as ready as they need to be. We set an ambitious goal to make 80% of our ships, submarines, and aircraft combat surge ready by January 1st, 2027. To do that, we are reducing maintenance delays, we are improving manning, training, modernization, and sustainment. In all of these efforts, consistent and predictable funding is foundational. We appreciate the continued support of this committee. In closing, I'm proud of our Navy accomplishments in the last year, and I'm excited about the growing consensus that is powering our maritime rejuvenation. The whole of government and whole of nation effort is essential to our security and prosperity. We have work to do to ensure that we remain the world's most premier maritime force for another 250 years. Your leadership and support are critical in achieving this imperative. On behalf of our sailors, civilians, and families around the world, I thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Admiral. I now recognize General Smith for your remarks.
Good afternoon. Chairman Calvert, Ranking Member McCollum, Chair Cole, Ranking Member DeLauro. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to appear before you today alongside Secretary Phelan and Admiral Kilby, my shipmate. I'm here for you on behalf of your Marine Corps, and I look forward to answering your questions. First, I'd like to start by sharing the Marine Corps' top 3 priorities. First, restoring a 3.0 amphibious ready group Marine Expeditionary Unit presence. This is the Marine Corps' North Star. That's 1 amphibious ready group constantly deployed off the East Coast, 1 constantly deployed off the West Coast, and 1 amphibious ready group episodically deployed out of the FDNF, the Forward Deployed Naval Force in Japan. The amphibious ready group with Marine Expeditionary Unit embarked is the most versatile tool in our nation's arsenal. It is the Swiss Army knife of the joint force, and we're working closely with our Navy partners to maximize this capability. Our second priority is accelerating force design. Force design is our righteous journey to adapt to the changing character of war. The nature of war remains the same, but the character changes. We are in the implementation phase. We're fielding new capabilities time now and reshaping formations across the force, from our Marine Expeditionary Units and Marine Littoral Regiments to our Marine Expeditionary Forces. And finally, improving quality of life. Every Marine deserves a clean, safe place to lay their head at night. They don't ask for much, but they do ask for that. Barracks 2030 is how we're getting after this. It is the most consequential housing investment in Marine Corps history. And quality of life goes beyond our barracks. We're also investing in the well-being of Marine families, because retaining our Marines means supporting those who stand by them. We say you recruit the Marine, but you retain the family. I'll close with this. Your Marines remain the most ready when the nation is least ready. It's who we are. It's our foundation. A forward-postured force, trained for combat, and built to deliver flexible, lethal options anywhere, anytime. Thank you again for your trust and support, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General. I'll first recognize myself for 5 minutes before we get into questions for both sides. Obviously, Mr. Secretary, the committee is continually concerned about the reported 18 to 24-month delay in the Columbia-class submarine program. As you know, the retirement timeline for the Ohio-class boats is apparently, unless I'm corrected on this, is non-negotiable due to the aging hulls, which means any further delay in Columbia directly threatens our ability to meet STRATCOM's minimum deterrence requirement. As you well know, the significant part of our nuclear deterrent is carried on the Columbia, will be carried on the Columbia program. Secretary Phelan and maybe Admiral Kilby may want to come into this too. You can walk us through the primary drivers behind the additional 18 to 24-month delay of the Columbia-class submarine program, and beyond the issues we've already seen, whether supply chain disruptions, workforce shortages, or integration challenges, what risks remain most concerning to you as we look ahead?
Thank you for the question. I know it's an important issue to you and top priority for myself and Admiral Kilby as well. I think it is a combination of a first-of-class ship, still an inexperienced workforce. It is supply chain issues. It is also a lack of modernization in some of this in some of the plants. And I think honestly, it's just sitting and going and talking to the workers and ways of improving workflow. And so these are things that I've met with the CEO of General Dynamics and Huntington Ingalls to talk about this and go through it. It was very interesting in some of their assessments of what they did not perceive to be as problems, where when I went and sat down with the workers, I got completely the opposite. So let me just give you a couple of examples which might help you understand in ways we think we can shift the schedule left. So in Japan, I went to JMU. they get the productivity out of 1 8-hour shift that we get out of 3 shifts. I believe that's for 2 reasons. One, their average worker is 50 years old. It is a career. They spend time there. They've been in that shipyard a very long time. 2, when I spoke to the welders in Japan, they spend 0 time on paperwork. Our welders spend between 30 and 40% of their time filling out paperwork to match designs, etc. That is a problem. The training, when they come from training and get actually on site, it's completely different. So these are things that they need to work on, and I've spoken to General Dynamics about it. We are working on a couple of different other ideas as well. There were a couple things I saw at Bath Iron Works, to be honest, that were excellent. And there were some things being implemented at Portsmouth that were really good that we need to start to integrate and do. This is a very big concern. I do think we can get the calendar shifted left, but it's going to take a lot of hard work and a lot of effort, and it is my #1 priority right now, given the strategic importance of this.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for that. Admiral, if you want to add anything to that?
I think the Secretary covered it. I do have the same concerns he does. I have the same observations about maturity of workforce and skilled labor. So at our public yards and our private yards, there has been a loss of that experience. So the supervisors don't have the same experience they used to. That's an important thing for us to correct. Additionally, we're looking at extending those hulls in our Ohio class that can make sure we don't have a gap in strategic deterrence. The first one is USS Alaska, which will extend it through APIRA in 2029, and there are 4 additional hulls. So I think that's a insurance policy to make sure that we are still the most survivable leg of the nuclear triad, sir.
Thank you for that. It's interesting to note that what's going on in Japan and South Korea, where they have a significant amount of the world's shipbuilding capability, is we've dropped now to 3% of shipbuilding worldwide. The Chinese are 50% of ship construction. The Japanese and the Koreans are about 35-40% combined, and then the rest of the world. And so it's disappointing that we've got ourselves in this situation. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, as you mentioned, Mr. Secretary, to straighten this out.
I'd like to go and if you can mention a little bit on border security, what you bring in that Homeland doesn't have, but more importantly, on budget and on time, and why other countries can do it and we can't.
Why don't we start with the border piece, and then we can go to another question. So from the Navy's perspective, 30 intelligence specialists on the border helping with the southern border, 58 P-8 sorties for intelligence and surveillance, and now 3 ships. And Minneapolis St. Paul is a littoral combat ship, as well as 2 destroyers, and they relieved 2 destroyers. So the presence for counter drug flow, counter immigration, there's a maritime component of that the Navy is performing and has performed for a long time. The first time I got underway on a ship in 1987, we had a law enforcement detachment, and that's something the Coast Guard and the Navy are really good at doing together to extend the reach of the Coast Guard.
Sir, in terms of the Marines, our 1st Combat Engineer Battalion, based out of Camp Pendleton, California, is operating on the southern border. They're doing engineer tasks. They're constructing concertina wire. They're building obstacles. They're doing what they do, so they're continuing to get the training that they would normally get at Camp Pendleton. They're just getting on the southern border. But that's our contribution as our 1st Combat Engineer Battalion.
Just real quick, just on the border as well. I mean, I think the Navy, since its inception, has been a Homeland Defense organization. They work with the Coast Guard. They do ballistic missile defense, and keeping sea lanes and trade lanes open has been part of their job since inception. So I think it's a very important aspect to what they do. In terms of on time, on budget, I think it's a number of different things. One, as I mentioned in my opening statement, the industrial base has been hollowed out. We have lost a lot of manufacturing and our ability to manufacture. We've had prior conflicts where we've spent a lot of money and the bills for our deferred infrastructure spend, whether that's piers, docks, is now coming due. And it's been going on for a while. And so these are not new problems. I mean, I look back at testimony 20 years, I keep hearing the same things. I'm trying to figure out why it hasn't been fixed, to be perfectly honest. But I will tell you, I think it's a combination of bureaucracy. So just to give you an example, in the Navy, in acquisitions alone, we have 56,000 people in our acquisitions department. Now, we did last year 217,000 contracts. That's 34 contracts per person. That's 2 contracts a month. Something's off. I keep trying to understand what are all these people doing. And these are complicated contracts, but I'll also be honest, when I look at our contracting, it's poor. We don't control our IP. We can't repair stuff. We don't have very good penalties built in for lack of performance. These are all things we are going to really try to change. And I kind of called it in my confirmation hearing, shared risk. I think it's great for the private sector to make money, and they should. But they should be paid according to the risk that they take. And that is not going on right now. And we need to fix that. So it is not an easy solution, but it has our focus, and we are going to get it fixed. It will take time. We will be very transparent with all of you and walk you through and tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly, and try to get it sorted.
Thank you. Chairman Cole.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to go back to something I mentioned in my opening statement, Secretary Phelan. Could you tell us whether or not that we're looking at restructuring the TACAMO mission, and whether or not we're looking at offloading some of those functions that it currently provides to the Air Force?
Thank you for the question, Chairman. I think I'm going to let Admiral Kilby answer that, but let me just give you my thoughts. Look, the investments in both the E-6B and its replacement, the E-130, are critical to nuclear modernization. I'm committed to improving that. It is a critical part, and then I'll let Admiral Kilby comment on your specific question.
Yes, sir. So as Secretary Phelan said, the E-6, which you now know so much about, has served us well. We need to make sure that aircraft gets through its service life and is replaced by its replacement. There is another mission assigned to that aircraft now, the ABINCAP mission, and that is the mission that needs a platform or a home, because the EC-130 just does not have the room in it that the E-6 does to perform both those missions. But most important, and I agree with Secretary Phelan, we must stay on track for the TACAMO replacement program. We've gotten more than our money's worth out of the E-6s. We've had this empennage problem, and we're repairing those aircraft to make sure they're safe to fly, to provide continuity of NC3. But I'm committed to the TACAMO replacement program and staying on budget and on delivery for that, so we can do what we do for the nation.
Just recently, the Navy stopped buying LCSs, halting production at the current 28 ships, rather than moving forward with the 52 that was originally planned. What can you say about this? Are we going in the right path?
Sure, if I could start and then turn it over to the Secretary. One, I think your points are spot on. Even though it's a Coast Guard mission to do drug interdiction, the Navy and the Coast Guard have worked together in this for a long time. The LCS presents some great attributes, as you've pointed out. One of them is a gigantic mission bay, if needed. So the ability to support General Guillot and Admiral Halsey, both Northern Command and the Southern Command commander, for missions south of the border, I think are a great use of that vessel, and it would allow us to free up DDGs to do other things. So I think there's great potential there. We have had some challenges with our hull mechanical electrical system, particularly on the Freedom class. We've addressed those through a combining gear fix, so I think those missions can be well served by LCS, allowing our DDGs maybe to use for another mission in Homeland Defense for General Guillot, like an out-of-area deployer from either our west or east coast. So we will look at these platforms, and we will field the best Navy we can for the budget we have to do the missions assigned. On carrier survivability and the Navy composition in the Western Pacific, the 6th Gen fighter is key to air wing of the future. So to me, the carrier is the most survivable airfield we have, period, end stop. The 6th Gen fighter is a keystone of our air wing of the future, which includes, as the Secretary indicated, manned and unmanned aircraft. And that's the beauty of an air wing, is that it can be updated and still be serviced by the aircraft carrier, which is a capital investment, which we're going to have for a long, long time. To me, it is the joint force that is going to win against China. That's the Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and the Army, and the Space Force. And the Navy brings mobility, which is our chief attribute for you and the chief confounding thing for China. So the carrier is a big piece of that because it brings mass volume fires over and over and over again, where a submarine will have to be reloaded and a destroyer will have to be reloaded, maybe at some place, and take it offline. That carrier's got sustainment power, and the thing that delivers it is a 5th Gen and 6th Gen fighter into the future.
Americanized, enduring high-level laser for shipboard use, and how are you incorporating lessons from the Army's development to reduce costs and per engagement and preserve the missile piles for higher and more important threats?
Sir, I don't restrict that only to directed energy, but that's certainly an area we're interested in. We have a Helios installed on the Preble, which is located in Japan. We had some problems with testing, but now we're up to 1/3 of the power, and we're going to continue to test that weapon system to make sure it works. You know, I've got buyer's remorse. When I worked with General Smith in our last life, I was the N9, which is the person procuring systems. And I was focused on a laser between 500 kilowatts and 1 megawatt because that's what it takes to knock down an anti-ship cruise missile. I wish I had been a little bit more thoughtful and taken a lesser power weapon that would have been capable against UASs. In the meantime, we're going to pursue that testing on the Helios system, but we're strapping on a lot of systems on the Ford Strike Group, which is going to deploy next from the East Coast, like a Coyote missile system, which is a much cheaper version of a munition to send at a counter-UAS threat, or a high-velocity projectile from the 5-inch gun. That's a very more inexpensive way to get at it, or Hellbow longbow missile, which is a more inexpensive way to get at that. So we're going to put those on that system. They're not fully integrated with the combat system, but I think they'll be very effective, and we'll test them out at sea, and then we'll procure them at scale if we need to.
That's good to hear. Secretary Phelan, workforce development to revitalize maritime industrial base is crucial in speed to speed up shipbuilding and improve readiness. Are there currently or planned partnerships between Department of the Navy and Texas-based community colleges, trade schools, or universities to grow the near generation skilled shipbuilding and maintenance workforce?
As a product of a Texas college, I wish I knew the answer to that, but I'm going to let Admiral Kilby answer that question. We are doing a lot of programs as it relates to shipbuilding and at a lot of different schools. I do believe we do have them in Galveston, I think.
Yeah, we've got to expand this, sir. So one of the things Secretary referred to was 2 weeks ago I went to Danville, Virginia, where we have an accelerated training and defense manufacturing center. And that's an exciting proposition for me. We used SIB money to invest in the Navy in Danville, Virginia. I watched five disciplines being trained, 8 hours, three sections a day, so 24/7, welders, non-destructive testers, QAs, additive manufacturing, and a thing called CNC. They had 16 CNC machines. At Norfolk Naval Shipyard, I've got 2. This part was produced in Danville, Virginia. It is a part required to fix a helo hanger door. When we went to go look at how to make that part, or if it was available in the stock system, it was not. It would take 40 weeks to make this part through traditional means. Danville did it in 19 days. And if I did it tomorrow, it would be 5 days, because I don't have to find the IP and get it run in the system and do a fit up. So to me, that is the promise. And we need to do that all over our country. Rep Captor, we talked about how this could happen in Ohio. That system is going to produce 900 people a year that at a 90% placement rate that go into the defense industrial base. That is the way to buy back our system so it has more tradesmen in it than it has today. We used to have 33% of our workforce was in that category. Now it's 11. My son's going to welding school at Northern Virginia Community College. I hope he goes to Danville, Virginia to get his cert. We're working through those people that elected to take DRP right now. So we're really looking at the structure and saying, how do we make sense of this and get the organization we need? I'm a shipyard fan. We lost 1,918 people from our shipyards. But when I looked at the specificity, and we're still analyzing what trades did we lose from, was it overhead, was it direct labor? The rough magnitude is 2%, twice the number of people in overhead from the trades. So to me, there's an opportunity to rebalance here, because we want that ratio to be 20% indirect, 80% direct, and we were a little out of balance. So there's an opportunity here to right-size the force, but we do need people like structural engineers to go adjudicate problems when we come across them. So we've got to come through that and do exactly what the Secretary said and get the most effective organization. So we're doing that work now.
It's good to hear.
Mr. Elsie.
Sir, there's tech sharing we've got to work through from a lessons learned perspective. For AUKUS Pillar 1, I think we've got it about right with our schooling now. Just kind of give you the laydown of where we're at. We've got 100 Royal Australian Navies in our nuke pipeline right now. Those are our schools, so they benefit by graduating from the schools. Ultimately, they'll have to create their own school for now. We've got 120 Australians in Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard. And then the conduct of avails together in Sterling is important. So I think that campus idea, just not knowing it fully, would be more aligned to Pillar 2 than Pillar 1, because our system, that conveyor belt needs to keep working. And I don't know that we're the Navy, we want to change our process right now from nuclear production and how we qualify our enlisted sailors and officers. So we'd really have to look at that to see if there's mutual benefit. Well, I think OSLO has done a great job turning those investments, and they're going to contribute to that 2.33 problem we talked about earlier by producing modules for our submarine construction. I think there's other opportunities too, sir, in the unmanned world. So when we think about a hybrid fleet, which is going to have traditional manned destroyers, cruisers, frigates, just like we're talking about aircraft unmanned, there are unmanned ships that could be built at non-traditional shipyards right now that could be very helpful to us. One of our focus areas is non-traditional sea denial, and that's the delivery of unmanned capabilities undersea, on the surface, and in the air that can help in a 2027 scenario in the Western Pacific. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there to expand in non-traditional vendors and shipyards. We have 3 fleet areas principally that are working this now: Task Force 59 and 5th Fleet, Task Force 66 and 6th Fleet, and the 4th Fleet. Now, there are different needs for those. I would tell you, necessity is the mother of invention. So Admiral Cooper, when he was the 5th Fleet commander, found himself ship poor. So he invested in unmanned technologies to do maritime domain awareness with things like a sail drone, which is a persistent vessel that can do maritime domain awareness. Similarly, 4th Fleet has adopted that. The work being done in the 6th Fleet is interesting because it ports right over to support Admiral Kaler and Admiral Paparo in the Indo-Pacific, because those same technologies can be used there in a manner that's effective. So it's almost a battle lab for the Indo-Pacific. So there's learning across all our fleets. The geography drives the use case for what you need for that, but our initial focus is this thing called non-traditional sea denial. Ultimately, though, I want to get to a hybrid fleet that engages our unmanned capabilities alongside our ships, supporting our submarines, in the air wing of the future for manned to unmanned teaming. So to me, that's the future state, and last week I was in San Diego with Admiral Paparo and Admiral Kaler. looking at their experimentation and rehearsal of these very technologies. Take a whack at this, sir. So we need to have a distributed system. I visited Red Hill. We're committed to doing the work we've agreed to do there, and we'll continue to complete it by 2028 and all the remediation that happens there. But we need to find other sites and distribute them around the Indo-Pacific to make it hard for China, right? We don't want to make it easy for them. So those can be mobile things. They can be like tankers and super tankers. They could be fuel bladders that I've talked about with my good partner, General Smith. But there are ways to sustain ourselves in a different manner that makes it hard for the adversary to confound us. So we're committed to that. There's alternate sites we need to look at for those fuel storages in the Pacific as well. Well, I guess in a reality situation, to be clear, the 6th gen fighter isn't going to come by January 1st, 2027. It's going to take time to develop that and build it into the future. So the 3-year part is a delay if we started the program late, but it would deliver far into the future. But we've got to commit to that because we're going to have aircraft carriers that are going to live in this contested environment, and that's my operational assessment that we need an air wing of the future that does everything the Secretary just described for the reasons he described it, to pace the threat. So in 3 years, we're going to deliver the fleet we have to be as capable as it can be to counter the PRC. And then we need to build that future fleet moving forward. We want to get a workable technology to be effective as in the maritime environment for counter-UAS and other things. I'm open to all that technology and doing it rapidly. I have to work through the steps in the bureaucracy to do that, but I want to be open to it and exposed to it. So yes, there could be high-powered microwave, could be another technology for us to be effective in that space. So all that is what I call a renewable magazine, where I don't have to load weapons to do that. So that's our focus, is to have an ability to defend our ships so we can use our high-powered or expensive munitions for offense, not defense.
Yeah, but again, if
support a full combat search and rescue task force, as seen in previous conflicts.
I will have to take that question for the record and get back to you for some specifics. I do believe this is in our contested logistics space, and we're looking at how we do this at scale with large numbers of people. But I will take that question for the record and get back to you.
I appreciate that. I've been hearing that a little bit from my home district base. So, and then another question for Admiral Kilby. The Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group fired nearly 800 missiles during its deployment to the Red Sea at a cost of about $1 billion to counter Houthi threats. What is the Navy's plan to pursue more effective or more cost-effective and scalable methods to address these types of asymmetric threats, and how are you ensuring greater transparency and operational reporting going forward?
Well, let me take the first part. I spoke about this a little bit, but we found ourselves in a position where those captains did what they had to do to knock down a threat, and they used expensive missiles to do it, and they've done it and are continuing to do it quite effectively. We want to provide them an alternative where they can defend their ships and other bases and allies in a cheaper, more effective method. So that could be things like a high-powered microwave, or a high-velocity projectile, or a Coyote weapon system from Raytheon that we got from the Army and bolted on that system, or a Hellfire longbow missile. So those are things we're in process with experimenting on the Forward Strike Group, which we'll deploy next. If effective, then we'll procure them at scale. But ultimately, we want to get to the end state we just talked about, where I have a relatively renewable, rechargeable way to have terminal defense and husband my magazines for that offensive capability.
Yes, sir. We're using our Marine Corps Systems Command, and frankly, we're using our Combat Development Integration Command in Quantico to go after AI. We leverage all of the DoD AI, artificial intelligence agencies. We are always in control. There's always a human on the loop. There doesn't have to be a human in the loop. There has to be a human on the loop who can leverage the autonomy that's brought by an AI system. We have to just determine where the human is on the loop. So I believe we're doing it. I believe that our Systems Command and our folks in Quantico keep us well apprised of how we can leverage artificial intelligence. for better decision-making, more rapid fielding, and frankly, more rapid responses. You don't need a human to direct the missile be fired. You need to have a human direct the system to fire at an inbound missile. When it's descending below 4,000 feet and closing in on your ship, the CWIS, the Vulcan Phalanx, is activated. It has permission already. There's just got to be a human on the loop.
All right, well, I appreciate that. Armed first-person view drones, how long will it take to fully equip all registered Marine Corps formations, and how quickly can these systems be fielded compared to more traditional costly platforms?
I don't have a good answer for how long it will take. The answer is we're not fielding them fast enough. I was just visiting our attack drone team a couple of weeks ago. What they're doing with low-cost detritables is stunning. They're turning hundreds of dollars of systems against thousands of dollars of inbound drones or against adversary troop formations. So I don't have an answer for you. But what I can tell you is we can't additive manufacture them fast enough. The Ukrainians are doing it on the cheap, and we're trying to keep ours on the cheap too. We're trying to make sure we build a Ford F-150 pickup truck, not a Denali. And so we're building these as fast as we can, but I would invite you, Congressman, down to our attack drone team at Quantico to get you a first.
One thing I just want to, on the close, is obviously you heard a lot about the Gen 6 fighter. I think, we've had air dominance since 1942. And we hope to keep it that way. Our men and women are on the ground, don't have to look up. Now maybe with drones they're constantly going to look up, but certainly with high-performance aircraft and be able to control the air is extremely important. And I know you have some short-term decisions you have to make here pretty soon in order to meet the requirements of these contracts. But we have, as you know, a fighter shortfall. I'm not quite, we'll probably put that question for the record, how big a shortfall we have. And obviously, last couple of months, we've lost three F-18s, and that line is shutting down, as you well know. We're going the last of the eight F-18s under construction. F-35 are not getting as many as we had hoped. We're well underway on the Enterprise and the Kennedy aircraft carriers, and so we're going to be flying off aircraft carriers for a long time to come. So, and these are important decisions. I know you're taking it seriously, and we'll submit some questions for the record. We certainly appreciate your being here today, and with that, we are adjourned.